Right now, we want to welcome from the Blaze, Jason Howerton is with us. Jason, how you doing, sir?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me. Glad to be back, man.
Yeah, it's good talking with you again. I think the last time we spoke was in Indianapolis. Appreciate you coming on the show this afternoon. We're going to be heading your way, actually, next month. I'll tell you more about that offline. But I got to say, I loved your piece of the Blaze, highlighting the debate yesterday, the D.C. City Council chambers, over this concealed carry proposal, which quickly turned into a gripe session and a way for council members to try to put in place amendments that really revealed how they feel not just about concealed carry, but about gun ownership, Jason.
Yeah, and this is a bill that you hear people refer to as a May issue concealed carry law, which basically says that they can decide. You have to prove to them that you have a reasonable, whatever they determine to be a reasonable need for a concealed handgun permit, and then they decide if you're going to get it or not. And so they're debating this bill on Monday, and it passed unanimously. But as we see with a lot of lawmakers, a few amendments were proposed to attach to this bill, and one of them was creating a database of everyone who's going to be going to be given a concealed carry permit. And so there's one councilwoman. Her name is Yvette Alexander. She's a Democrat. I know, very surprising. And they're talking about this amendment to create a database of all these gun owners. And at one point, they're discussing, which I think is a very important issue of confidentiality and right to privacy of gun owners. And she blurts out, "Who cares about the confidentiality of a gun owner? We don't want it, so expose yourself." And that's the type of thing that you're not surprised to hear some anti-gun lawmakers feel, but sometimes you are surprised when you hear it said out loud without any hesitation.
Absolutely. And considering what this bill actually does, the council members made it very clear that if you want a concealed handgun license because you want to be able to protect yourself, that's not going to be reason enough to get one. You've got to be the victim of specific crimes. There has to be a specific documented threat against your life. So what they actually wanted to do, Jason, was to make the information available to potential stalkers. Let's say you are a woman who is being stalked. You actually obtain a concealed carry license. Your stalker, the D.C. City Council wants your stalker to be able to access that information, and anybody else.
And the general, it makes no reasonable step towards logic or preventing any type of potential violence to have this database that's readily available to the public, which they also wanted to make it available by Freedom of Information Act request. But both of those amendments were eventually withdrawn, but they're still kind of considering it and talking about it, and it could technically be added later. But if you look at this, I was looking at the councilwoman who clearly doesn't care about the confidentiality of gun owners, looking at her Twitter account today. And she pretty much what her argument in this is, she went back and forth with a few people on Twitter. Her argument is basically, what are you afraid of? Why do you care if your private information is accessible, to the public? And this guy who maybe, I guess he kind of is claiming he works for NASA, so he asked her for her private address and information, and she declined, surprisingly.
Yeah, this is, again, this is not perhaps surprising. It is, I think people around the country should pay close attention. If you don't live in Washington, D.C., please look and take note and mock and point and laugh at the politicians in Washington, D.C., but also be aware that they're very serious about this. They really do believe that if you're a gun owner, you don't have any right to privacy. Now, interestingly enough, Jason, the same council member that introduced these amendments, Councilmember Grosso, had also introduced an amendment in D.C. City Council recently that would seal the arrest records of those who have been arrested for nonviolent marijuana possession. So if you're arrested for a drug crime, nonviolent drug crime, that information should be sealed. Nobody should be allowed to know this. However, if you are a legal gun owner and you've been approved by the district to be a concealed carry holder, everybody in the world should know that.
And it's really disturbing in this way, because you see that some lawmakers really do see gun owners as a type of second-class citizen, and non-gun owners, no group of people should be held to a different standard under the law, under privacy, under any of that than any other group. And it's just upsetting that apparently this woman and other anti-gun lawmakers feel like gun owners don't deserve the same privileges under the law as everyone else.
I think it boils down to their belief, and that's what it is. It's almost a religious belief that there is no real Second Amendment right, or if there is, you should be able to wish it away because D.C.'s different, D.C.'s special, and so therefore, in our nation's capital, they should be allowed to greatly restrict our rights. Jason, I find that argument to be quite offensive. Our nation's capital should be a place where our rights, that should be the place where our rights are championed. That should be a place where we have elected officials fighting to make D.C., the nation as a whole, just at a very small level. And yet here they are trying to eradicate rights that are enshrined in our Constitution.
And, John Lott, I'm sure he's a big Second Amendment expert. And I was talking to him the other day about this bill, and he pointed out that, if you want to make the case, we're not working with statistics and facts when they're making these laws, because if you want to make the case that in D.C., you have to keep the city safe, you got politicians there, everything else, shooters and killers and people who are mentally disturbed or want to go on mass shootings and kill a bunch of people, the statistics show they go for the soft targets, the targets where they can do the most damage without being stopped by someone with a gun. I was just in D.C. a few weeks ago. That is not a soft target by any stretch of the imagination, and I would venture to say that as anyone who had intentions of being a mass shooter or was insane, that would not be on one of their top targets, because there's officers and Secret Service and people with guns everywhere, just not citizens. So it's just I don't know how valid any of their arguments for this for restricting concealed carry so tightly.
Well, I think the other argument against their line of thought there is that let's say that D.C. does present targets for those who would want to commit these atrocious acts. The current law in Washington, D.C. that bans the carrying of firearms, I don't think anybody would say that is an effective tool at stopping those types of individuals, nor would the allowance of concealed carry, the recognition of our right to keep and bear arms, be a green flag for these individuals to tell them, all right, go ahead, boys. We got concealed carry now. That means that murder's legal. That means assassination's legal too. That idea is just absurd to me.
Isn't that the age-old argument that as soon as you say it, the argument is as soon as you say it's illegal or legal, the people who are going to either break the law or follow the law somehow change their minds. It just never works that way. Murder is illegal. That doesn't stop people. Whether guns are legal or illegal or banned or concealed carry is legal, people who have disturbing or terrible plans, they're just going to do it, and the best we can do is have good people prepared to defend themselves, who can in those public places, and it's just it seems that the argument will just never ever end. It feels like it's never going to end.
No, look, I don't think that it ever will end. But I think what we are seeing here is a clear demonstration that the objections to gun ownership, and that really is what it is here. It's not concealed carry; it's the idea of gun ownership that they're objecting to, and their objections are based not just on their own belief system that a gun is not right for them, but them applying their belief system to everybody else and saying, I want to impose my will in my decision. I've decided that I don't want to be a gun owner, so nobody else should be able to be a gun owner either. We should make it as hard as possible, as difficult as possible for people to make these types of decisions. That's not freedom. That's not liberty.
And you also have to remember that when I talk to people who aren't gun owners and don't have training in firearms and everything else, the way they think about guns and about carrying a gun, and they'll say to me, what if you get in an argument with someone and you're carrying a gun on you? Aren't you more likely now to shoot that person or to pull your? I'm like, no, you're less likely because you understand the implications. It's the last thing you want to do or will do as a last resort because you understand how serious of a responsibility it really is. But people who don't own guns or aren't educated about guns, they don't have that knowledge, and they sometimes seem a little averse to obtaining any knowledge about guns or anything else.
You're right. I think it's still incumbent on gun owners to try to reach out and help educate folks and do it in a way that, again, isn't derisive, doesn't turn people off. There is a lot of ignorance on the issue, and I don't mean that as an insult. I just mean the absence of knowledge, absence of information. And you're right. There are going to be a lot of folks who already believe that they know all that they need to know, and you probably won't be able to reach those folks. But there are still a few open-minded Americans out there who are still willing to learn, particularly when the opportunity to learn is put in front of them. Jason, unfortunately, sir, we are almost out of time, but I really do appreciate you coming on the program today. It's great talking to you again.
Absolutely, man. Let me know when you're down here in my neck of the woods.
I will indeed. Jason Howerton of the Blaze with us here on NRA News, Cam and Company.